WSB Television is on the air.
7.5 decades of making and covering history. News.
They said, get down, he's got a gun. There he is up on the roof.
Weather.
We're trying, as you can see, it's raining. The roof is going off the mansion.
Sports.
The national pastime should be brought to the southeast.
And community.
This is Metro Atlanta. This is what we do. We're community. We help each other.
Join us as we celebrate 75 years of WSB-TV.
Hello, and thank you for being with us. Welcome to this special celebration of WSB-TV.
It's a celebration 75 years in the making.
Over the next 2 hours, we'll take a look at all the history-making moments.
From news to weather to sports, we've documented every major story in the past 75 years.
We're going to take a look back at those moments and hear from the people who covered them.
And we'll hear from WSB trailblazers who've made history in their own right.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we share with you some of our favorite moments throughout the decades.
On September 29th, 1948, WSB-TV had its first broadcast.
The first television station in Georgia and the first licensed in the South.
And it's been 75 years of history-making moments.
75 years of history.
You stand by to resolve to full. Dissolve.
September 29th, 1948 was the start of something big.
WSB Television is on the air.
75 years ago, WSB-TV became the first television station licensed in the South. The Cox family invested in a new way to provide news and entertainment.
Now, the news at noon, produced by the WSB Television News Department.
Are untied.
At first, there was just a 15-minute newscast, and even music, and marionettes.
Well, I don't know too much about it, Mr. Don.
Yeah?
Historians believe there were no more than about 2,500 televisions in Atlanta on that first night of broadcast. But oh boy, did television quickly catch on.
What TV allows is a public square that you can't get anywhere else. That's where people go when there is a crisis, when there's a high point.
A high point, such as 1949, when there was a groundbreaking moment. WSB brought Atlanta the first televised football game, even placing a TV set at Georgia Tech's Grant Field to prove what was on that tiny screen was actually happening. And you may remember this. It's the Popeye Club from the 1950s.
Can you imagine that gang? There aren't really any fish in there.
In the early days, WSB's home was at the Biltmore Hotel. Then in 1955, a move into the stately White Columns, where it remained for 43 years. Veteran journalist, the late Don McClellan, remembered coming to White Columns for the first time in 1960.
Somebody had said, say hello to Ray. When you're down there, I'd come down to take the FCC first class license. So I went and say hello to Ray, and Ray said, you interested in a job? And I said, well, sure.
McClellan and so many others consider Ray Moore their mentor.
This is an exciting city and an exciting state to cover as a television newsman.
Moore was an anchor and was news director during the turbulent 60s.
I got an interview with Dr. Martin Luther King on the night of President Kennedy's assassination.
I really feel that he was a friend to the cause of civil rights, and he created a climate of civil rights concern in Washington and in the nation.
As news director, Moore hired a string of reporters who went on to become network stars, including John Palmer, Ken Lee Jones, and Tom Brokaw. And Moore hired WSB legend John Pruitt.
Carter says Georgians have been slow to accept the fact that he is a serious presidential contender.
Good evening. Those April showers came a few days early this year.
It was here amid the ancient pyramids that the mystery of Imri's mummy began about 3,000 years ago.
Pruitt's first assignment, a pro-segregation rally where a white mob attacked young African-American protesters.
What I had witnessed, what I had seen, what I was appalled by was on film, and it went around the country and in effect around the world.
Pruitt and the WSB team knew they had a responsibility to show the world what was happening.
It was scenes such as those seen around the country on almost a nightly basis that really propelled the civil rights movement.
when WSB-TV and Cox got behind the civil rights movement and said, there are wrongs that need to be righted, and we're going to stand for truth. That had a ripple effect across the country.
WSB was committed to exposing racial injustice and covering the civil rights movement. And the station led by example, hiring Atlanta's first African-American television reporter, the late Lo Jelks, in 1967.
In Atlanta, the ban on Sunday gasoline sales may not be a problem.
Then hiring Atlanta's first African-American news anchor, Jocelyn Dorsey, in 1973. You'll hear extensively from both of these trailblazers just ahead. And of course, Monica Kaufman.
Well, John, you know, the city began its task today of filling the vacancies created by the mass firings.
In 1975, Kaufman became the first woman and first minority to anchor the 6 p.m. news in Atlanta.
Putting a black woman, me, on the 6 o'clock news in 1975, that's a big deal.
Kaufman and Pruitt would go on to become the faces of WSB-TV News, earning the trust of Georgians who invited them into their homes every evening. In 1990, Channel 2 was in Tokyo when the head of the International Olympic Committee announced Atlanta as the host for the 1996 Summer Games. And we were alongside former Atlanta Mayor and Ambassador Andrew Young and the delegation that made it happen. Our coverage of the Olympics continued with all the preparations, then the games themselves, including the Olympic Park bombing.
As we know, the FBI now says some sort of explosive device definitely was involved.
Right now, in case you're just joining us, we want to show you the picture shot by Robert G.
Then the hunt for and capture of bomber Eric Robert Rudolph.
The drifter arrested here in Murphy, North Carolina early this morning is indeed Eric Robert Rudolph, the suspect in the Centennial Olympic Park bombing and several other bombings.
Years later, another historic event. When Georgia native President Jimmy Carter won the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, Norway in 2002.
Good evening from Oslo, Norway. I'm Monica Kaufman.
And I'm John Pruitt. Jimmy Carter, his family, and friends are celebrating tonight. Peace Prize firmly in hand.
Story after story, decade after decade, big stories, small stories, all that had an impact and a ripple effect on the state of Georgia and really almost the country. That's the legacy of WSB.
A legacy that includes exclusive coverage of all the major news events, including the Atlanta child murders in the late 70s and early 80s.
Another young boy was found dead.
We're working on links.
I'm still hoping that he's alive.
You got to love my children.
The Atlanta day traders shootings of the 90s.
They said, get down, he's got a gun. There he is up on the roof.
This service will remember the 12 victims killed by Mark Barton.
And the Fulton County courthouse shootings of the 2000s.
Carol, we're live out to the side of the courthouse now. Hopefully you can hear us okay. They just took away someone here from the courthouse.
We had security concerns about Brian Nichols before today's incident.
Yes, we did.
Nichols is in custody at this location.
There's been a lot of big defining moments, and the newsroom is always preparing for the defining moment. Preparation meets opportunity is an understatement in the WSB newsroom.
Every person who has come through that newsroom believes in balanced storytelling, believes in shining the light in dark places, believes in protecting our community, elevating our community, and that is something that is just part of our DNA.
All with a team of journalists committed to serving you, the viewer.
Veteran reporters, many of whom have been in the market for 35, 30, 25, 20 years.
I've been here 20 years, and I see the mark that we make every day. I see the value that this station adds to this community.
WSB has such a presence in the state and in the region that it would be very easy to just sit back and rest on that. But what makes us have that impact every day is that we don't.
I know that there's a big responsibility on my shoulders to get the stories across and to get them across accurately.
I have always believed in being fair
and telling both sides of the story, and so that guides me. And that's what I think of WSB when we're telling stories.
It's never lost on me the importance in the tone WSB sets. We are the station that people turn to in a time of crisis.
Throughout the decades, WSB has led the way on the tech front, transforming from black and white of the early days to color, to becoming one of the first digital TV stations in the nation. Along with News Chopper 2, our live remotes, and now a fleet of drones. All that technology is great, but it's the people who make a difference. People who make up the WSB team on a mission to serve the community.
It's just so special. I mean,
one of the great differences at WSB, and it may sound a little corny, but it's not corny, it's true, is family.
It's people that know the community and have been here so long that that's invaluable.
They want to hear about what's going on, but they want to know the good news, too, which is where I come in, you know, because basically I want to make sure that your day is started off right. 75 years of keeping you and your family safe from dangerous weather.
This station has a commitment to weather. There's no doubt about that.
A look at some of the most memorable moments throughout the decades and the state-of-the-art technology used by Severe Weather Team 2.
It was a tremendous responsibility.
WSB Trailblazers.
I didn't have the idea of the impact.
The barriers they broke and the opportunities they created for others. Celebrating 75 years of WSB-TV is sponsored by Publix, where shopping is a pleasure, and Montlick Injury Attorneys, fighting hard and winning cases since 1984.
Throughout our 75 years, WSB-TV has been committed to covering Georgia's champions of change.
And not just covering them. Some of those champions, including the late Lo Jelks, worked right here, becoming pioneers in broadcasting.
It was a tremendous responsibility.
A tremendous responsibility indeed when Lorenzo Lo Jelks walked into WSB-TV in 1967 to become the first black television reporter in Atlanta.
To have the honor of working in that kind of environment just thrilled me so.
Jelks was hired by legendary WSB news director Ray Moore.
Which is something we're all very proud of, hiring African Americans and minorities to do the jobs that they should be doing. Qualified people that are recovering parts of history or news at the time that needed stories that needed to be told.
Lorenzo Lo Jelks set that bar. WSB-TV set that bar for what needed to happen.
And you were the first African American reporter here, anywhere in town. Was it frightening at all for you?
It was. It was, Carolyn. No, there's no question about that.
Do you remember any of the negativity that came around you being that first black reporter?
I did get some of that, there's no question. On assignment, occasionally, I would get some drawbacks, but very, very limited. Most people are very cooperative and very helpful. I say most people because that's the way it was. You know, there were a couple of folk who maybe were not particularly interested in, but that was mild and it was limited.
From the Fulton County Courthouse.
Sadly, that first year of his time on television, we never saw his face. It was only his voice. Now, that allowed you the next year, when Lo Jelks was seen on television and the angry letters and phone calls started coming in, station management could say, now wait a minute, is that the same Lo Jelks you're talking about that's been on our air for a year? That Lo Jelks? And it would catch the caller or the writer by surprise. But nonetheless, those barriers were broken.
Jelks put all that aside, focusing on his job and love of journalism, at one point even interviewing the head of the Ku Klux Klan.
Majority of the news media have always tried to belittle
the members of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan there.
And what do you remember about that interview?
It was a strict desire on my part to experience that interview, and I enjoyed it tremendously. Actually, they seemed to embrace me more than anything else.
Lojelk's an unassuming champion of change.
Once you hired Lojelk's, then other stations in the market said, you know what, he's good. It's time. You know, let's start hiring more qualified black people because that's our audience too.
I just feel fortunate in having an opportunity, you know, to work at WSB.
You try to use whatever talents you have to spread it, to help other people along the way.
Another WSB legend, Mrs. Billy Suber Aaron, paved the way for other women of color in broadcasting. In 1968, she made the transition from education to television, becoming the first African-American woman in the Southeast to co-host a daily hour-long talk show.
I am sure that it was something that I wanted desperately to do.
Aaron co-hosted Today in Georgia, interviewing key figures in Atlanta's and Georgia's history, for a time while grieving the loss of her first husband, Samuel. One of those interviews was with baseball great Henry Hank Aaron. The two developed a close friendship and married in 1973. The Aarons appreciated all they had and were committed to giving back, creating the Hank Aaron Chasing the Dream Foundation.
Identify kids who needed a chance, who needed an opportunity to develop their talents.
Okay, so this is why this is such a big deal, because that's your face.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, I guess it is.
Trailblazer, first African-American anchor at WSB-TV.
Wow. You know what? It's amazing that I would never think in 1,000 years that this would be here.
The Jocelyn Dorsey Community Room.
This is one of her many well-deserved honors. The WSB Community Room is named for Jocelyn Dorsey.
Voting is very easy.
Dorsey was the first African-American news anchor in the Atlanta market, right here at WSB-TV.
I didn't have the idea of the impact that people took away from me being on the air.
You take it wherever you want. Goodbye, sir.
Dorsey joined the team in 1973, doing just about everything from producing, working on the assignment desk, reporting, and of course, anchoring. She faced extra pressure to prove herself in the newsroom. And from some people in the community, Dorsey and WSB faced backlash.
Yes, it was a risk because the backlash was tremendous. I mean, believe it or not, I think what they didn't realize when I was hired, I didn't have an afro. But I'd always worn an afro in college. So when I went on the air, I let my afro show. And it was horrible. I mean, the backlash was horrible. However, Don Elliott Hill, he understood that having the afro was not just a cultural thing, but it was who I was, and that I felt that people should not judge you by your appearance, but they should judge you by the content of your character. And so he let it go and supported me.
Dorsey says she also faced challenges from some in the African-American community.
Because I came from a school that was not an HBCU, a historically black college.
But Dorsey says that began to change after she was assigned to cover Maynard Jackson's campaign, the first African-American to be elected mayor of a major city in the South.
We got to be friends, as friends can be between a journalist and a politician, I should say. So he basically gave me his blessing. And once that happened, everything else opened up.
You talk about impact, and you talk about far-reaching, not just here in the Atlanta community where she is beloved and rooted and revered, but I mean across this country, across this business. She opened doors for people who are still having major impact on what you see on television. Okay, I quit.
Longtime WSB anchor Monica Kaufman-Pearson credits Jocelyn Dorsey and Lo Jelks for paving the way for her and others. And she credits the Cox family.
I always loved with the Cox family that they didn't react, they took action. And it wasn't a case of, well, what's everybody else doing? It was a case of, let's do what's right.
Monica joined Channel 2 in 1975 as Atlanta's first woman and first minority to anchor the 6 p.m. news.
When I went on the air, there was a lot of pushback from some people in the audience who, one, didn't want to see a woman, and two, didn't want to see a black woman sitting on the 6 o'clock desk. John Pruitt embraced me in more ways than one. He was that protector from those viewers who called in and said things that we can't repeat today.
And there was objection to it, sometimes very vocal objection, and Monica got a lot of that, the hate calls and that sort of thing. But she handled it. She handled it with aplomb.
And she handled it like a pro.
I'm Monica Kaufman, Action News.
Becoming a trusted journalist, Georgia families welcomed into their homes for decades.
I've often said that Monica was probably more instrumental in improving racial relations in this city than any civil rights leader, because she, on a nightly basis, reported the news and projected that warm and winning personality, that humanity, that ability to connect on a nightly basis. And people liked Monica.
Monica retired in 2012 after anchoring 37 years at WSB, and her legacy is still felt today.
But to have young women say to me, when I was growing up, to see somebody who looked like me doing the news, it told me I could do it. And you just don't think about that in the process of doing your job.
I want you to know, the first time that we anchored together, and we only anchored together a few times.
A couple of times, yeah.
I have never felt more human on that desk. You have a gift, and I think that gift brought me to Atlanta. And I just want you to know how much you are loved and appreciated. And I break protocol, so I'm gonna get up and hug you in the middle. You know I love you, and thank you so much.
Thank you
so much for all that you've done.
After Monica's retirement, the passing of the torch to Jovita Moore as WSB's main anchor.
Jovita Moore,
Jovita joined the WSB family in 1998. And as a reporter and anchor, she was committed to getting the story right.
Her journalism ethics was her legacy. The fact that she knew how to do a story. You know, she wasn't window dressing. She was a journalist.
And one of the goals is to expose...
Jovita was a committed journalist, devoted mother, and champion of change, spending countless hours with civic associations and nonprofits. She was also passionate about mentoring students. In 2021, Jovita passed away from an aggressive form of brain cancer. Cox Media Group and the National Association of Black Journalists created a scholarship in her name, supporting students studying broadcast journalism.
She reached back and brought students along with her. So for a scholarship now to be established in her name, I think she would be very pleased.
Winter storms,
We haven't had power for 2 days.
tornado outbreaks.
I thought that was it.
It might be the wildest 24 hours for weather in Atlanta history.
We continue to track the possibility of additional tornado touchdowns.
It looks like a tornado slashing toward I-75.
And historic flooding.
Pretty much lost everything.
Throughout the decades, we've seen it all in Georgia. And Severe Weather Team 2 has been there every step of the way to keep you and your family safe.
As we celebrate the 75th anniversary of WSB-TV, a major part of our legacy involves covering weather.
That's where Chief Meteorologist Brad Nitz comes in, leading Severe Weather Team 2.
Throughout the decades, we've been there to guide viewers through every weather event. And we've always been committed to providing the most accurate forecast to help keep Georgians safe.
Now the wind patterns have shifted and the westerlies have broken into the country.
Here's a rainfall report for the first 7 months of 1958.
The possibility of some shower activity getting into our area.
This little cool front will continue to push on through the metro area.
Very powerful thunderstorms right here.
We're going to see the clouds begin to part.
75 years of WSB-TV, 7.5 decades of weather coverage you can count on. And early on, the National Weather Service recognized the important role television plays in keeping people weather aware.
With TV and radio, that is the only means we really have of getting the weather out.
And the mission has always been to keep viewers safe.
I would go to my safe place right now.
It's an absolutely important part of what makes this television station the powerhouse that it is.
Our job is to try and get it right. Not easy to do when there are so many variables with weather.
To help navigate those variables, meteorologists who make up Severe Weather Team 2, providing viewers with the most accurate forecasts.
This is much worse.
Georgia Power Company Trouble Department.
Like in January 1973, when veteran meteorologist Johnny Beckman warned viewers about a major ice storm that paralyzed much of the state. More than 200,000 people lost power for days. From a winter storm to a massive tornado outbreak. In April 1974, a super outbreak killed 335 people and injured thousands of others. There were nearly 150 confirmed tornadoes in 13 states, including 2 EF4 tornadoes in Georgia.
Well, I thought that was it.
The violent tornadoes which rampaged into Georgia last night first made their presence felt here in West Georgia.
Meteorologist Glenn Burns joined WSB-TV in January of 1982 during Snow Jam 82 with 4 inches of snow, sleet, and freezing rain.
2 more miles to go.
Glenn was promoted to chief meteorologist.
Don't even work.
Then the blizzard of 93, the storm of the century.
Right now, let's go to the busiest man in Atlanta, Glenn Burns. You predicted it, and it has roared in with an intensity that...
Just looking at Joyce Oscar was just like watching Joyce on the ice shelf at McMurdo Station, Antarctica. It's just that incredible out there.
The blizzard of 93 famously stranded Channel 2 reporter Joyce Oscar and her photographer in the mountains for days.
We haven't had power for 2 days now.
The preparation for that storm saved a lot of lives, I think, and I think it really helped everybody get ready for a storm that was going to be unlike anything they had ever seen before.
Meteorologist Karen Minton covered the blizzard alongside Glenn.
We looked at the first computer guidance on this storm. We both looked at each other and said,
no way, no way. Lightning fills the skies over metro Atlanta. Severe storms have been hitting all night, and we are still not in the clear.
Then in April 1998, Karen had her own brush with danger.
I don't think I've ever been that scared before in my life. And I was really afraid that at any moment my car might flip.
Minton was on her way into work when she came face to face with the storm.
I get onto 75, and as I do near Windy Hill, the lights are out everywhere.
3 tornadoes ripped through North Georgia, including the Dunwoody tornado. 1 person was killed, and 5,000 homes were damaged.
Snow is beginning in the metro area. We'll see sleet and freezing rain central Georgia.
From start to finish, Channel 2 would continue to be there for viewers every day, and especially during major weather events, like in January 2000, when a major ice storm hit Atlanta a week before the Super Bowl. And then when more winter weather hit on Super Bowl weekend.
A foot to 2 feet over parts of the...
Meteorologist Brad Nitz joined Severe Weather Team 2 in January 2006.
You see that hook shape?
2 years later, in March 2008, a weather event we'll never forget.
This is a chaotic situation down here.
There was concrete falling off the roofs and glass just blowing and hitting everything.
On the night of March 14th, 2008, an EF2 tornado tore through downtown Atlanta.
Chaotic. Everybody was running, coming out, trying to get in at the same time.
The following day, no relief.
It might be the wildest 24 hours for weather in Atlanta history. Just a chilling sight from our airport tower cam.
In September 2009, catastrophic flooding across North Georgia.
It's beyond belief.
Schools, homes, entire neighborhoods were underwater.
Pretty much lost everything.
Channel 2 Action News used a boat and new technology to bring viewers live reports from flooded neighborhoods. Roads completely covered by water. In April 2011, one of the weather events that stands out most to Glenn Burns during his 40 years at WSB. An EF4 tornado hit the city of Ringgold, killing 9 people and damaging or destroying 700 homes and other buildings.
We had this massive outbreak in tornadoes. Brad would be driving the radar. Brad is analyzing as he's running the radar.
We also used our technology to warn viewers about and show you the Adairsville tornado on January 30th, 2013. We can see circulation in the clouds right here. It looks like a tornado right near downtown Cartersville. From tornadoes back to snow and snowmageddon in January 2014.
A winter storm warning remains in effect, not for more snow, but for the icy roads.
It takes me 12 minutes, and it actually took me 12 hours now.
Sheets of ice turned interstates into parking lots. Some drivers slept in their cars, while many abandoned them and just walked home.
Thank you, my friend.
Glenn Burns retired in 2022, and after working alongside Glenn for nearly 2 decades, Chief Meteorologist Brad Nitz now leads Severe Weather Team 2 into the future.
So it's a high responsibility, something we take seriously, but it's also a joy to serve the community.
I enjoy being able to inform people, to prepare them for their day-to-day lives.
Weather impacts everyone, so we want to make sure that the forecast is geared towards the viewer, how it's going to impact your day, how it's going to impact your weekend, and how you can make plans around it.
For 75 years, WSB-TV has always been on the cutting edge with weather technology to keep viewers safe. We'll take you through the decades to show you the advancements and the tools used exclusively by Channel 2. Celebrating 75 years of WSB-TV is sponsored by Montlick Injury Attorneys, fighting hard and winning cases since 1984. And Publix, where shopping is a pleasure.
Channel 2 has always been the first to incorporate new technology into forecasting. Here's a look at the changes throughout the decades that have made a life-saving difference.
Westerlies have broken into the...
Decades of leading the way with weather technology. In the early 80s, WSB-TV was an innovator with its radar. It started in black and white, then came partial colorization, highlighting heavier rain echoes. Fast forward to 2011, and a historic move by WSB-TV.
This is the new dual polarization Klystron Doppler radar. It's the most advanced Doppler radar in the world. It's going to completely change the way we cover and track severe thunderstorms.
WSB-TV led the way, investing in and installing the world's most powerful weather radar.
Nobody else in this market has a radar like that. Nobody else in the Atlanta area has a radar that is as powerful as that.
Radar allowed Severe Weather Team 2 to warn viewers about a mile-wide tornado that hit Coweta, Fayette, and Heard counties in March 2021.
A tornado emergency has been issued for the city of Noonan right now.
And again during this year's tornado outbreaks in January.
Boy, we're really seeing that fire up here. I'll be surprised if a tornado warning is not issued with this, Brian. Look at that, a big jump in that velocity there. Let's treat this as a tornado warning.
Then minutes later,
well, the folks at the National Weather Service seeing what Brian and I are seeing, they've just issued a tornado warning for this portion of the storm in Troup County.
We're able to tell our viewers, hey, you know, we're watching this, it's not warned yet, but this is something we're watching, and then a warning comes out.
It's huge in a severe weather situation, especially when it comes to a tornado.
WSB-TV also uses Storm Tracker 2 3D, an exclusive tool that's like a weather MRI, allowing us to see inside a storm. We used the technology during the tornado outbreak on January 12th.
What Brian's looking at here is a cross-section of the tornado debris. Kind of the pinks and the reds, that's all rain. But what we're looking at here, the greens and the blue, that is lofted debris from the tornado that's moving into Troup County right now.
Severe Weather Team 2 can also monitor our radar on the road from a fully equipped SUV we call Severe Weather Chaser 2. And WSB-TV is the only local station with augmented reality, or AR, a unique way to explain and show viewers what's happening with the weather.
Eventually, there's a sudden discharge of electricity. That's lightning.
So many memorable moments in our sports history. And Channel 2 has covered them all.
Hey, how we doing? Oh my God, is this crazy or what?
A look at the impact of sports on Georgia and our coverage of the events that brought the world to our doorstep.
The International Olympic Committee has awarded the 1996 Olympic Games to the city of Atlanta.
It's the event that brought the world to our doorstep and changed the future of Atlanta, the 1996 Summer Olympic Games.
So many memorable moments in our sports history, and Channel 2 has covered them all.
Sports bring people together and can shape the identity of a city.
And Channel 2 sports director Zach Klein has a look at the impact of sports on Atlanta and all of Georgia.
A very popular show, I'm delighted to say.
He was a legendary college football coach, and we are proud to say Georgia Tech's Bobby Dodd was part of the WSB-TV family. One of WSB's first sports shows, launched in 1949, showed replays of Tech games. For the first decade and a half of WSB's existence, local sports coverage focused on a lot of college ball. Then, in 1966, events that would change Atlanta forever.
The national pastime should be brought to the Southeast.
In 1966, the Milwaukee Braves became the Atlanta Braves.
Atlanta is a big league city. Atlanta has needed a big league stadium for a long time.
And the Atlanta Braves moving from Milwaukee, and what that did for the reputation of the city and the entire South, that they were now seeing the name of Atlanta in those standings every day, along with the names of all the other major cities in the country. Huge impact.
And along with the team came superstar Hank Aaron. 8 years later, in 1974, history. Hammer and Hank hitting his 715th career home run to break Babe Ruth's all-time Major League record.
He was the articulation of what we wanted to be as a city. He was a black star in the South. He was the only black star that was in the South.
1, 2, and 3.
Fast forward to 1991, and one of the most impactful stories former sports director Chuck Dowdle says he ever covered during his 24 years at WSB, the Braves' worst to first season.
The city turned out in huge numbers. I think the estimates were close to 1 million people at that parade. We carried it live. It was something that was just incredible. Those really stick in my mind, and I'll carry those with me forever.
The same year the Braves came to town, 1966, the birth of the Atlanta Falcons.
Your advantages would be that, like with the Falcons in my position, I was a rookie and coming with a new football team, a rookie football team.
2 years later, in 1968, the addition of the Atlanta Hawks.
We're going to have WSB radio and television broadcast the Hawks games this year.
And in 2017, the final piece of the pro sports puzzle, Atlanta United. Atlanta's pro sports teams put the city on the national sports map, but one event brought the world to our doorstep.
To the city of Atlanta.
In September 1990, Atlanta won the bid for the 1996 Summer Olympic Games.
It had a huge impact on the population because, you know, like I said, the world came to Atlanta for the games. They loved what they saw and they stayed. Our population exploded.
Of course, a huge part of our history are the championships. Our first major championship, the Georgia Bulldogs, happened in 1980. We spoke one-on-one with head coach Vince Dooley when the team returned home as heroes. 24 hours after, how does it feel now?
Feels even a lot better.
A decade later, in 1990, Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets would bring home their own national championship.
Bobby, you couldn't have possibly anticipated this. Well, not like this. I really couldn't, Chuck. But it's a great win for us.
5 years later, in 1995, the Atlanta Braves' first World Series title. We were inside the locker room in the middle of the celebration. In just their second season, Atlanta United won the MLS Cup. I spoke exclusively with team owner Arthur Blank on the field.
I do want the city to feel special, and they should feel special.
Back on the diamond, the Braves were once again the champions of the world, winning their second World Series title for Atlanta in 2021. Atlanta, be holding this T-shirt.
Hey, how we doing? Oh my God, is this crazy or what?
And the Georgia Bulldogs going back-to-back with national championships in college football. Can you describe what this moment means for you in the University of Georgia?
It's just so special. I mean, hasn't been done a lot. I'm just so happy to be a part of it 2 times in a row. It's awesome.
Only Channel 2 brought you complete coverage of the parade and celebration from start to finish.
That's for sure.
75 years of community impact. A look at WSB's legacy of covering and supporting nonprofits that do life-changing work.
For 75 years, WSB has been a news leader.
And we take pride in being a leader in the community. Quite simply put, it is part of our DNA.
We'd like to bring you the first WSB-TV Family to Family special.
An historic and meaningful moment in Georgia history. 37 years ago, in August 1986, WSB-TV debuted local television's longest-running community service campaign, the Family to Family Project.
It's a way that the community gets to feel a part of the station, and the station gets to feel a part of the community.
Former WSB-TV anchor Jocelyn Dorsey became WSB's Director of Editorials and Public Affairs in the 80s. And for decades, she was a major champion of the Family to Family Project.
Tonight, we begin with
the Family to Family Project produces at least 6 primetime specials each year, tackling important issues, including race relations and voter education.
We care so much about the community, and it means the world to us that we're a part of the answers, a part of the progress in our community.
And throughout the decades, the Family to Family Project has partnered with and supported thousands of nonprofits.
It is wonderfully gratifying to be in an organization that will double down on doing the right thing.
Candace Presley is the current Director of Community and Public Affairs.
To take this great television station with such a rich history and so much power, and I get to use that power to shine a bright light on individuals and organizations that are making a difference in our community.
Presley oversees our convoys of care, collecting and distributing critical items for natural disaster victims, and our annual Stuff the Bus campaign, collecting backpacks and other school supplies for children in need. She's also a champion of our weekly public affairs program, People to People. The Family to Family Project also supports nonprofits by providing free public service announcement time to hundreds of organizations. We also provide discounted tickets to family-friendly events.
I think community is everything. It truly is. It's your opportunity to really go face-to-face with the people who are out there making this station.
It's really a gift to get that connection with people. It's all about the connection with the community. That's why we've been doing this for 75 years.
This station is more than just a television station. It's part of the community that has really changed the fabric of the city of Atlanta.
We got it. And our celebration of WSB-TV's 75th anniversary continues. Just ahead, veteran reporters and photojournalists sharing their most memorable moments.